In this video, I'm going to show you how to obliterate your debt in retirement using something called the spare change method. Coming up next on Holy Schmidt.
Holy Schmidt!
Believe it or not, one of the simplest things to do in life is turn around being in debt. The math is pretty straightforward, and if you use the method that I call the spare change method, you can actually do it quite quickly. By the way, without doing the balance transfer game, which frankly will often get you into more trouble because it gives you more debt and access to more credit lines, this is the fastest way to pay down your debt. Before we begin, please make sure you click subscribe and notifications so that you get alerted the next time I post a video. I post about twice a week. All right, let's get into the spare change method. We're all human beings, and human beings have emergencies, they have needs, and frankly, they like to buy stuff on credit cards because you don't feel the impact in your checking account when you do it, at least not immediately. The problem is that most people think backwards when it comes to debt and money in general. In fact, those that don't generally are those that are quite wealthy, but pretty understated. I'll talk about that in just a moment. They have an illogical inner brain relationship with money when what they should have is a logical outer brain relationship with money. Let me explain. We've all heard the story about how our brain developed over millions of years. And the inner brain and the ancient part of our brain is responsible for the fight or flight reaction on one end and the love and connection feelings that you have on the other. That part of our brain is extremely reactive, and frankly, when it was being developed millions of years ago, the concept of debt and money did not exist. The inner brain is reactive, the outer brain is slow and measured, very logical. Let me take you off course here for just a second and I'll bring you right back. Have you ever met someone who is really successful in business? I'm not talking about a successful salesperson who can generate a lot of sales. I'm talking about someone who owns a business, has staff, and has built their business over time into something that would be enviable for anyone. Do most successful business people jump out as Mr. Personality? No, they usually have a pretty average personality. For example, no one ever accused Bill Gates or Warren Buffett of being able to hold the crowd at Comedy Central. It might even scare the shareholders if they could. Did these successful business people have an easier start than you? For some, yes. For some, no. Some might have even had a far worse start, which actually gives them an edge. I'll explain why in a second. Were they smarter than you? Probably not. But here's what they have and what you need to obliterate your debt. They manage their ancient brain, their inner brain. They manage their ancient brain. People rush to get into debt and run from paying back debt the way that our ancestors ran from the high grass in the Amazon. In fact, some form of resentment and or denial happens when someone makes a payment to a credit card company. You know what I'm talking about. They know that the interest rate is too high. They also feel like they have better use for the money, and they're only going to give the credit card company the bare minimum that's due so that they can keep the rest of their money for themselves. That's the inner brain talking. So they pay the minimum, which is great for the credit card company, but horrible for them. By the way, if this is your mortgage payment instead of your credit card payment, how do you feel about paying your mortgage? Well, most people feel okay about it. They might even feel good about paying their mortgage. Why? Because your inner brain feels good. You're building an asset. You're building security for your family. But here's the worst part. The inner brain feels good when you buy stuff. It could be complete and total junk, but you feel good when you buy it. A bobblehead, for example. That is, unless you have one of these babies. Ben Franklin. Why am I telling you all of this? Because understanding how you got here is really, really important for you to get out super quick. First, by definition, being in retirement means that you are living on a fixed income. And living on a fixed income means that you have limited options to pay down debt without doing something drastic like selling a house or cashing in a savings bond or some other action that you really shouldn't be doing. When you take out a mortgage, you take out an obligation to pay the same payment 360 times over 30 years in most cases. When you start, your first payment is almost entirely interest with a bit of principal, and your last payment, the 360th payment, is almost entirely principal with a bit of interest. Most people don't actually think about what's going on with a mortgage because each payment is identical and it's automatic. In many cases, they take it right out of your checking account, but certainly you know that on the first of the month, you need to send in your mortgage payment, if nothing else. So what about credit card debt? The interest rate is high, exceedingly high, too high, frankly, for you, because the interest rate assumes there's a certain number of people that default. And assuming that that's not you, you're actually paying for those defaults with a higher interest rate. Also, unlike a mortgage, your minimum required payment actually goes down when you make a credit card payment. Make enough credit card payments and you free up a credit line. You free up a credit line and you're able to buy more stuff, bring your balance up and starting the process all over again. So if all you do is make the minimum payment and never charge again, and that's a big if, you will be paying your minimum payment for decades on that credit card. Now here's what makes this particularly difficult for retirees, just being completely candid. As the head of the family, the retiree often feels like they need to pay for everything. They've had that role their entire life and they feel like they must continue to have that role into retirement. Family members that could actually afford to pay for the night out instead of the patriarch or the matriarch, and who'd be happy to do it, just assume that it makes mom and dad feel good. So how do you turn this beast around? Step number one, we have to crush the inner brain thinking. Step number two is to declare it and actually be proud of it. I think a lot of people would be proud to hear mom and dad say, our goal this year is to pay off our debt. When you do this, they will naturally expect you to pay for less, and let them let you pay for less. And you don't need to make a big issue of it either. You just need to be able to say to someone, one of my big goals in the coming couple of years is to get rid of all of my debt. So if I don't seem to be paying for everything, please excuse me, but I'm doing what I can. You'd be shocked to know that many kids don't fully understand that mom and dad have money limits, and they're really happy to help. A lot of them would be, just by knowing the fact that you are trying to pay down debt. The next step is to stop using your credit card, credit cards, or credit cards and personal line of credit completely, starting right now. Only use a debit card. Next, not pay only the minimum to the credit card company because you want to stick it to them. The only person that you're sticking it to is yourself. That's your inner brain. Now let's get into the mechanics of the spare change method, but before we do, please make sure you click like. YouTube uses the number of likes a video has to drive it up in the search results, and I want to help as many people as possible. There are only 3 simple steps to the spare change method. Step number 1 is to add up all of your minimum payments for all of your debt, credit cards, and personal line of credit. Often this is a home equity loan. Whether you have 1 credit card or you have 10, add up the minimum payments for all of them. Once you've added this up, write that number down. This is called your base payment number, and it will be really important from here on out. Your base payment is what you are required to pay no matter what, as of today anyway. Step number 2 is set aside $2 or $3 a day to overpay your credit cards. That's approximately $60, maybe a little bit more, $75, $90 a month if you can afford it, but certainly $30, if not $60 a month. We'll assume 60 for this example. Add that to your base payment, and this becomes your total debt payment. And just to restate what I said earlier, people who carry a balance on their credit card, when they make a payment, pay a lot more in interest than they do in principal. And as you will see in a moment, every extra $1 or $2 per day will cut months off of your credit card payments because of this point. The important thing though is that you commit to making the minimum total debt payment. That number is your baseline. It doesn't change until you're completely debt free. Now we're going to use some real numbers. Assume you have 3 credit cards. Credit card number 1 has a balance of $6,155, has a 19.99% interest rate, and a minimum payment of $118.91. Credit card number 2 has a balance of $7,599, an interest rate of 14.99%, and a minimum monthly payment of $122.55. Card number 3 has a balance of $2,525, an interest rate of 12.99%, and a minimum payment of $37.69. So the total owed in this example is $16,279, and the total minimum payment, remember this is your base payment, is $279.42. At $2 a day, $60 a month, and the total debt payment is $339.42. You will not pay less than your total debt payment, $339.42 in this example, until you're debt free. Step number 3 is to make the minimum payment on each credit card, today's minimum payment. Over time, the minimum payment will decrease, but you're going to pay the minimum that you're paying today in order to continue to pay off your credit cards more quickly, except for the highest interest rate credit card. That credit card, you're going to pay, in this example, an extra $60. By the way, whether it's $30, $60, $70, even $90, whatever your commitment is, it almost doesn't matter. What does matter is that you absolutely make the minimum payment of $339.42. In this example, yours will be different, of course. Now I have a question for you. What happens to your minimum credit card payment when you make a credit card payment? Well, next month's payment is slightly less, only by a few dollars, but it will be less. What happens if you still pay the total debt payment that you've committed to? You have a little more than $60 in this example to pay down principal. Take a look at this graph number 1, credit card number 1, your minimum payment is $118.91. That's $102.53 in interest and $16.38 paying down the debt. But if you pay $60 more than the minimum, so instead of $118, $178.91, you're prepaying almost 4 months of debt, which means you knock off 4 months of payments. By the way, 4 payments, 4 times $118.91 is $475. You paid $60 and got back $475.69. That's a 792% return on your $60. By the way, $475 is real money. You can spend that on other things when you're done paying off your credit cards months, many months, even years early. And that's only the first month, and it's guaranteed. What kind of investment gives you that type of return guaranteed? And as I mentioned before, you're going to do this all on auto pay and instruct your bank to continue to make the minimum payment that was due on your first payment, regardless of what happens to the minimums over time across all of your debt. As you can imagine, you're going to knock off credit card number 1's debt pretty quickly if you're making 3 or 4 payments each time you add $60 to the principal payment. Once that's done, you start on credit card number 2. This is going to move even more quickly because remember, you are still committed to paying the $339.42. So you apply all of the $118 from credit card number 1 plus the $60 from credit card number 1 to the principal repayment of credit card number 2. Keep paying the same minimum that you agreed to at the start of the process on credit card number 3 and focus the entire excess on credit card number 2. Finally, once that's done, take the entire $339.42 and apply that to credit card number 3. Paying that one off will be very quick because you have no other credit card debt and you're making big payments on your lowest interest rate credit card. But, and I can't stress this enough, once you start paying down big chunks of your credit card debt, the pressure is going to start to come off and you're going to be tempted to slow up paying the $339.42 because you have other uses for it. Don't be fooled. That's your inner brain talking. Stick with the plan and continue to pay your total debt payment that you agreed at the beginning of the process. A word of advice, this will feel slow at first because the balances aren't going to change much in the beginning. But each month that goes by, the balance will drop faster than the previous month. And all of a sudden, you're going to look at your balances and they're going to be dropping precipitously. In other words, don't give up. Most people give up right before victory when it comes to paying down credit card debt. And it's really not that hard if you stick with the plan. Let your outer brain do the thinking, not your inner brain. Last but not least, I have a free gift for you, the Retirement Ready Checklist. It helps you identify some of the key issues that you need to think about before going into retirement, or course correct if you're already in retirement, and it's absolutely free. Just go to my website, holyschmidt.com/checklist. Also, if you like this video and you want to see more of me, don't forget to click subscribe and notifications so that you get alerted the next time I post a video. I post about twice a week. Also, check out this video right here. This is the one that YouTube says you're going to like the most out of my collection, and they're pretty good at picking the winners. This is Jeff Schmidt. Thanks for watching.